Good
Good
morning,
morning.
Dr. Alfred Stevens. Thank you very much for accepting this interview today. And we know that you have a very, very busy agenda. So thank you.
Yes,
Okay,
you're welcome.
so we're going to go ahead and start with the first question.
Okay.
How do you manage the finance operations of Aldine?
Okay, before I answer that first
Yes.
question, do you mind if I just tell you a little bit about me?
Oh,
Just
yes,
for about
yes,
10,
Sure.
yes.
15
Thank
seconds,
you.
so know me
Yeah,
and
we appreciate
you
that.
have
Yes.
some background knowledge here.
Yes.
I'm Tamika, as you all
Yes.
know, Tamika Alfred Stevens. I've been in Aldine for this is my 17th year. I started out as a teacher and skills specialist, and then transitioned over into the finance world, working with some teacher incentive grants, and had that opportunity. And then started working with, after working with teacher incentive grants, I started working with federal grants as the director of consolidated programs, and then just kind of moved up a little bit to executive director of finance, and now assistant superintendent of finance. I've been in this role nearly a year. So last October is when I was officially named as the chief financial officer. But at that time, my predecessor was preparing to retire,
Yes.
Ann Hazan. I'm sure y'all know
Yes,
her.
yes.
Yes.
And she retired in January. So after January 31st, things got real because then it was really me
Yes.
learning the job, if you will. So it's been a unique opportunity. I'm very thankful for this opportunity and to be able to share my knowledge with you all today.
Thank
So
you.
thank you for being here as well.
Yes.
Okay, so to answer your first question regarding how we finance operations, so everything we do, or not everything, but a large portion of what we do is driven by our property tax collections. So we collect property taxes to help fund our portion of the tier one allotments, or all the allotments that we receive. So there's this local portion that we are responsible for, and then we also get state funding.
Mhm.
So about 34% of the total revenue we receive for our all of our operations and our bond funds is from local funds, so property tax collections, and about 55% is from state funds,
Okay.
and then about 1% is from federal funds.
Only 1%.
Only
Wow.
1% that it's directly attributable to the general fund. Now we do have some federal funds that we get that are supplemental, so they're not used to, if you will, fund our operations. They're used to enhance our instructional programs, like our Title I grants. Those are supplemental funds. Title II, we do get IDEA B special ed federal funds.
Okay.
You know, those grants range from Title I's about 24 million. IDEA B is about 20 million, but again, that's outside of finance operations. That's truly going directly to student instruction, if you will, and to supplement and add to the value of the basic instructional program that our basic finance operations is providing.
Just to expand on this, because I know the federal funds, there are some requirements that need to be followed to use that money. Do the state and local follow similar requirements? Is one more strict than other?
Federal is more restricted than state in many regards. But with our state funding, there are some accountability pieces and things, compliance and fiscal responsibility, if you will. But definitely the federal funds come with, you implement these programs, and if you implement these programs in this manner, you're going to get the funds to implement the program. So it's not just a stream of money.
Okay.
Property taxes is revenue that we're collecting.
Yeah.
Yes.
The Title I program and the IDEA B programs that we are paying, funds that we're using to support programs are actual programs that you have to implement. You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
And you're getting funding to implement those programs. So it's slightly different there.
Okay.
Yes, but federal funds are, I would definitely say, are more restricted.
So question two is, could you describe a method you use to prepare a report? One of our assignments was to look at the district report, which is the CAPR or CAT.
Oh,
So
the CAFR.
yes,
Yes,
the CAPR.
Okay.
Do you help to elaborate that one or?
Yes, okay, so that's our annual financial report that's completed each year. It's a requirement. And we have a team of accountants, if you will, that are responsible for, and of course, with my oversight, that are responsible for compiling and reviewing all of our expenditure report data.
Okay.
And so there's this ongoing review of expenditures on a monthly basis, or actually on a weekly basis, but we report this information to the board on a monthly basis. So there are no surprises at the end when you're compiling your annual comprehensive financial report. And so, for reviewing those expenditures, you're monitoring the budget because you can't have expenditures that exceed your adopted budget. The board is required, or the district is required to have an adopted budget in place before the start of the fiscal year. And so, it's an ongoing process. It's not anything that's done at year end. It's just that the final report, if you will, is completed at year end. But we're in audit mode right now.
Oh my goodness.
And so, our auditors are Whitley Penn, and they were actually here in March for an interim visit. And so it's still the school year is still going on. The 16-17 school year, you're here in March
Yes.
auditing our financial records, but they can't wait until June 30th to begin that process because, like I said, it's a very detailed process. They're looking at everything on our general ledger, all of our expenditures, all of our investments. I mean, the full gamut. And I will give you a copy of our annual. It's on the website
Yes,
as well.
Well,
yes.
okay.
But so it's a thick document, and if
Yes.
you're not familiar
Yeah.
with finance in that regard, it can be a little confusing. But just a few sheets I'll just note for you. The balance sheet is the biggest piece, making certain that we account for everything that we're supposed to account for. But basically, just monitoring the expenditures. The accounting team, each person is responsible for different tasks. But the main thing is making certain that we are monitoring our bond funds, because our taxpayers adopted that, approved that 2015 bond referendum. And so that's a huge project that we have going on right now. So accounting for those funds accurately. And then, of course, making certain that we account for the funds that we are spending in the general fund. So,
You said a very specific word. You say team. You said I work with a team of accountants.
yes,
That's very important, I guess.
absolutely. 3 people, 4 people, 5 people can't do that job alone, And so we have a cash management accountant, a budget accountant. We have an accountant that oversees the debit card and all the travel processes. We have an accountant just strictly responsible for the ledger and the budget. So they all do different things. And so as year end approaches, all of that data compilation comes together. And as a team, we sit down and we go over the different audit requests, and we make sure we provide that. It's called a trial balance, which shows every expenditure for the district. I mean, by line item, from teacher salaries all the way down to what we paid for the utilities. So it's, like I said, it's very comprehensive. It includes everything, and the team is responsible for doing their parts. And just like on a campus, everybody is responsible for doing their part, and then you bring all of that together, and you hope that would yield positive student achievement results. Same way in the finance, where you're putting all your components together, and under finance, there's payroll, there's accounting, there's purchasing, because there are procurement guidelines we have to follow, which is another piece that the auditors monitor. Yes, procurement is very important. And that's a whole separate interview probably.
Yeah.
And then there's cash management, there's risk management, because we have to have insurance, given the recent effects of the storm that we've had, the district has to be adequately covered for all of our campuses and facilities. So all of that has to be documented. And if it's not documented, it's like it didn't happen. And so with audit, that's the big piece. At this point, we should just be extrapolating reports from the system, because there's no way for us to go back and generate anything at this point, because we're already functioning in a whole other fiscal year. So it's compiling records that already exist from the previous fiscal year. So that's why I'm saying you have to monitor it on a monthly basis, so that you don't have any surprises. Or if you do have a surprise, it's a happy surprise. Oh, we didn't spend as much as we thought we were going to spend. So we're going to have more money rolling over into the new year. Things of that nature. And I'm sorry, I'm getting a little long-winded.
No, I appreciate that, because we have seen this in theory, but to hear from you, because you do it on a daily basis, so it now is making sense. Like, I read some things on that report, I was trying to understand, but now the way you're explaining it, now it makes sense.
Right. And you have to tell me in layman's terms sometimes, because you're right. This is what I speak all day, every day. So when I'm trying to explain certain things to other individuals outside of this world, I like to use more user-friendly terms, so that you can at least understand what I'm saying. So, but if I were speaking to my team, the terminology may be, slightly
Yes,
different.
Yeah.
exactly.
So, there's a jargon associated, with everything that we do.
I just have a follow-up on that question. So if there is, an extra money that we have for the year, so it rolls over for the next year, or what is kind of the law or procedure for extra uh, finances?
Sure. So what happens is we have, when you have a budget,
Mhm.
right? So you have your bottom line,
Mhm.
and then you already assess to get to that bottom line. You've already done your CNA, your comprehensive needs
Mhm.
assessment. We have our district scorecard.
Yeah.
All of that drives the decisions that we're going to make as to what items we need. So your budget goals, right?
Yes.
And so usually you have your, not usually, you have your goals,
Mhm.
and then you have your revenue to fund those goals.
Yes.
Okay. And if there's a shortfall, meaning, okay, I have these needs and they're going to cost me $500, but I only have $300.
Mhm.
What's going to fill that $200 gap? Because
Mhm.
you have to adopt a balanced budget.
Mhm.
And so we use our fund balance.
Okay.
That's the terminology. It's called a fund balance, and that's the district's savings account.
Okay.
And we're required to have 3 months of operating expenses in that fund balance or that savings account.
Mhm.
So you take the total budget. So this year's district budget is $652 million,
Mhm.
and you divide that by 12 months. So that's a little bit over $50 million a month,
Mhm.
or less, I should say. And then you multiply that times 3,
Mhm.
and that's the amount that you should have in your savings account at all times. Kind of like you should operate at home.
Yes.
You're supposed to have 3 to 6 months worth of savings. So if anything happens, you can pay your bills, until the situation can fix itself, hopefully. And so we have to use fund balance each year to balance our budget, because we've adopted deficit budgets, meaning we don't have enough state and local revenue coming in to meet our needs,
Mhm.
to meet those expenses. And so we have to go into our fund balance to pay for that, to fill that gap.
Mhm.
So if expenditures come in less than planned, so if we adopt a $650 million budget, but we only spend $625 million, okay, so depending on how much we had to use from fund balance, let's say we had to use $30 million from fund balance to balance that budget for the year. Well, we only have to use $5 million technically, because we didn't spend the full 650. We only spent 625, so that helps us.
It rolls.
So it rolls into the fund balance for the next year. So we're using less of our savings than we thought we would be using. That's what that means. But just know that the goal is always to have whatever expenses that you need or that have been identified should match the revenue that you're getting between your state and local sources. They should match. But that you can ask any CFO around here that the probability of that happening is slim to none. But many times you have to dip into your fund balance to meet those, to cover that deficit or that shortfall. And we've had to do that for a couple of years now, just because of the nature of our needs and things such as that.
Have you, I just want to ask, from your experience, have you heard any school districts that do not plan for this and then would cost them in that financial turmoil from the trainings that you have with Region 4? Has there been like situations that they don't prepare for, not putting aside savings?
I would say that there's always probably some sort of unexpected expense that can occur, but that's why you have insurance, so the storm.
Yeah, I was thinking of that.
The
Yeah.
unexpected expenses associated with that, the decision we have to make with Mendel. When I think about, who is it? Our neighbors here, Humble, and how Kingwood High School is no longer a Kingwood High School. So they don't, those kids have been rerouted to Summer Creek. So there's 5,000 kids in one school now. So that whole building is not able to be accessible.
Yeah.
So that's totally unexpected. And so initially, that's a huge expense, that you have to incur, to get that building up to par. But then that's why you got to get with your claims adjusters. You got to get with your insurance and get those claims going, so you can file your insurance, because you're paying people to come in and do that work to get it going, with the understanding that hopefully you're going to be reimbursed for a significant portion of those claims. So at any given time there could be something that's unexpected. One of the things we have to monitor carefully is our healthcare. You know, healthcare has gone through the roof,
Yes.
and we're self-funded. We are not a part of the TRS healthcare. And so there were years, maybe about 7 or 8 years ago, where we had positive fund balance, meaning we had money in that health fund, in that savings account there. But the expenses and the claims have increased significantly.
Yes.
You know, and so um, that can be an unexpected expense if you don't monitor it, because at the end of the year it has to balance. So that means that if you didn't collect enough in contributions from the employee side, and then the district has to contribute their contribution, you put those two together. If you haven't pulled in enough revenue, is what I'm saying. If you get enough money in, and you have more expenses than you have money, you have a problem, right? So you have to, the general fund, the local fund balance, is having to help support that need. And that can be unexpected if you don't monitor it. So what I found is that you have to understand the different programs and elements of your budget, and you've got to monitor. It's just like with your kids and your teachers. You've got to monitor, you've got to follow up, you've got to ask questions, and then you have to make adjustments. So if you know you're going to have a shortfall, you have those critical conversations, and you go back to your board, and you're transparent, and you talk about those challenges and what we need to do. And then you be thankful that you have fund balance to go to, because some districts don't even have enough in fund balance to support their needs. So in Alding, we're fortunate in that regard, but it's still a savings account. It should not be the account that we,
You're gonna keep pulling.
yes, oh, we don't have it, we're just gonna go to the fund balance.
Yeah.
Oh, no. So anyhow, I could go on and
Oh,
on.
Yeah,
that's
but I
really
can see
good.
pretty much your goal
Thank
is to keep a healthy budget.
To keep a healthy fund balance,
Mhm.
and to make certain that the budget that we adopt
Mhm.
is that we spend that or less. You know, we want to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars. You know, we don't want to set a tax rate that's too high and we're collecting all this money and saving it, because that doesn't make sense either. So we need to make sure that we are setting a tax rate that's going to be levied to generate the funds that we need to meet our needs.
Perfect.
So that's why we have to understand our needs, and you know, and talk with our stakeholders, and know what factors need to go into that budget assessment process before we adopt the budget and present it to the board. Okay.
Question
Okay,
three?
yes, I will have, what is the current tax rate in Aldine?
Okay. So good question. Last night the board approved the tax rate, and that rate is $1.37. That two pieces make up that total tax rate. The first piece is M&O, maintenance and operations, that's used to fund all of the operational pieces of the district, and that is $1.13.
Okay.
And then the interest and seeking fund, which pays our bond debt, is 24 cents. And that is a 5-cent increase from last year.
Okay.
And that 5-cent increase is directly related to the bond referendum, to be able to make our bond payments. So the M&O tax rate has not gone up in several years. It's been at 113, but the INS rate went up by 5 cents. So that's why the total tax rate is now $1.37.
And how do you do that when we have this salary raise and things like that? And how can you keep the same M&O when we are getting these salary increases? Or
So again, that goes back to making adjustments to your budget and strategically abandoning.
you are taking from somewhere else
Yes.
to cover for that salary raise?
Yes.
Got it.
Yes, that's a part of what happens. Again, it goes back to what our needs are. So, you know, we evaluate programs every year, we evaluate personnel every year, and that's on the instructional side, but we also have projects and things that happen on the operations side, because you know, we have custodians, you know, you need toilet paper in your buildings, you know, you have all those different things that are indirectly impacting your campuses. And so we have to look at all of that, local projects, you know, renovations, things like that are usually capital expenses that are we use our bond funds for. But before we had the bond funds, there were times when we had to make certain renovations, or certain things had to be done, because as you know, several of our campuses are really old. So we've done a good job of taking care of them. But you know, with a 65-year-old campus, there's certain things that you have to do, and it can get costly, and the upkeep on those buildings. So I hope I'm answering your question.
Yeah,
in
it's
that regard.
yeah. I heard this comment from people saying, "How can we get a raise when we know
Yeah.
the budget cuts?"
Yes.
Everybody knew that we have budget cuts
Well,
this year.
that's
So
managing your priorities
Mm.
because it's still a competitive system. We have Humboldt here, we have Sci-Fair, we have Katy, we have HISD, we have Klein. And all of us are fighting for the good teachers and the good administrators. And so we have to keep a competitive salary. And most of our teachers live outside of the district. Most of our professional staff, I shouldn't say teachers, professional staff they commute into the district. And so we have to make certain that we are competitive in that regard to make it worthwhile. We want you to feel like you're coming over here, you're having a great experience here in Aldine, you love Aldine, and our salary is competitive with your neighbor. I myself live in Conroe. So again, we have to be competitive in that regard, and our HR team does a really good job of researching salaries around our area and communicating with other school districts about, hey, are you raising your teacher salaries this year? Or has your board had those discussions? And of course, nobody talks about it. It's like, because it's still competitive in that regard. So we have to manage the priorities, is basically what I'm saying, and make strategic decisions. And then we have to repurpose. So if we're saying that, making certain that we're asking our teachers to do more with less, and we're asking our teachers and our staff to go through this reconfiguration process, which is going to be, an overhaul of our instructional program, then we need to make certain we're taking care of them. So in order to do that, okay, what can we defer or delay? What funds can we repurpose or redirect so that we can be able to give teachers a raise? And so those are the conversations that are happening.
Okay, question 4. What is the superintendent participation in the district finances? I mean, how does she participate? What does she do? What's her involvement?
Sure.
Et cetera, et cetera.
Well, she's very involved in this process because she understands the nature of, we have to have a good, solid financial system in place to support our needs. And so we have weekly meetings, she and I, one-on-one meetings. Where she expects me to be the expert in this area, and she expects me to know what I'm talking about, And so I will tell you that Dr. Bamberg is well versed across many different areas. She was one of the few superintendents that testified at the legislative session this year on state funding and the impact of us not receiving enough funds or districts across the state not receiving the funds needed to support, district needs and instructional needs. So to answer your question, we have these one-to-one meetings, and then we have cabinet meetings where the budget is discussed explicitly. And then she likes for me to bring her data, and reports to make before we have our board meetings to make sure we're on the same page about, this is where we are, this is what the expenditures are, this is how much it's going to cost us to implement this project. So before any type of item is approved in the budget, I have gone through it extensively with her. And then we decide that, this is what it needs to be. And then we present that information to cabinet, and then I present that information to the board. But she's very hands-on in that regard, and she asks really good questions. And what I like about Dr. Bamberg is if she doesn't understand it, she'll say, now wait a minute, Tamika, go back. And she'll say, tell it to me, in plain terms, like I'm trying to do right now.
Yes.
But she's been superintendent now a little bit, 10 years, I think. And so she's had some experience with this side of it, but she expects me to be the expert in school finance because I am the one that's living and breathing this, every day. And she expects me to bring her accurate information. And that's what I do.
Now, so everything needs to be approved by her before you present it to the board, or there are things that maybe she's not that convinced, and even though
When I say approved, I'm talking about we've reviewed it. I'm not going to give something to the board that she doesn't know about.
Okay.
That's what I mean.
Okay.
But the board is the one that approves.
There's the board. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. But she's my boss.
Yes.
So you discuss things, you review things with your boss first, and then the board governs us.
So
because
the
I
board
have to make recommendations to them, or we have to make recommendations to them. And then they ask their questions, and then if we need to make adjustments, and as we've had to do, we go back and make adjustments, and then we come back at the next study session and be presented to the board again. And, we have those, it's very healthy discussions. The budget is a hot topic, just because of the nature of everything that's been going on and us
Yes.
reducing our budget significantly, about 30% this year. So, um,
Yeah, I just got an email yesterday about transportation that they're limiting the number of the amount
Of
of
field trips?
yes, field trips, buses, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's
Yeah.
gonna hurt. That's gonna hurt us big
Yes.
time.
so you read, then you think about, okay, what field trips do we want to have? Because we can't have 5 this year. We can only have 2. So we have 2. I'm just making that scenario
Yes,
up.
yes, yes.
You pick your 2 field trips and you say, okay, next year we'll have to do something different. But that's a part of repurposing and redirecting funding in order to support other district needs.
Okay. The next
So,
question.
yes. So how do you share tax rates and budget initiatives with the stakeholders?
We have information that's shared. We have public meetings.
Okay.
As far as the budget itself and the tax rates, we're required to have a public hearing. So it's shared at that public hearing. But prior to that, we have the parent advisory committees. It's shared in that regard. The district has a strategic design committee, and those are stakeholders. It's completely comprised of stakeholders, and some people like me. But the budget and all kinds of aspects of the budget are shared in those sessions. What else? I don't know if we haven't gone into the budget a whole lot at the district, the DEAC and the BEAC. We've talked about the Title I budgets there. But specifically as it relates to our tax rate and budget initiatives, the public meetings that we have, they're posted, and anyone can come to those meetings. So and I call it a study session. That Monday night, that's posted. Anyone can come to that on Monday, and of course, anyone can come to the board meetings on Tuesday. So all of that is in our, our public meetings that we have monthly. And as far as the tax rate information, that's at the hearing. And we had that hearing in June to propose the tax rate. And then we just received our certified appraisal rolls earlier this month. So I had to have another public meeting last night at the board meeting to ask the board to officially adopt the proposed tax rate that was presented in June.
Can you explain to us, like in the terms, the way you are using it beautifully, that we will understand the difference between the compressed tax rate and rollback tax rate?
Okay, so your compressed tax rate is it's from a 2005 law.
Okay.
Okay, but in layman's terms, it's the tax rate that you must at least set to generate the maximum target revenue. Okay, so you have a target revenue. Okay, so you have to levy a certain tax rate to get that, to maximize that target revenue. That's what your compressed tax rate is. And so Aldine's compressed tax rate is $1.09. So in order to fund our operations, our tax rate has to be at least 109. And so our M&O tax rate is currently 113. Okay, so we are above that minimum to maximize our target revenue. Now I see that the flip side to this is the rollback rate. Want me to answer that too?
Yes, please.
So the rollback rate is the maximum rate, that tax rate you can set before having a tax rate election. So for Aldine, and we have to use these truth and taxation worksheets. There's these state funding worksheets where we plug all of this data, funding components and things like that into the worksheet, and it gives us an output. And so our rollback rate is $1.40.
Oh, wow.
So that's the maximum tax rate that we can levy without going back out to the community, having a tax rate election to ask them, can we increase the tax rate? Okay, and then the voters have to approve to do that. So our tax rate is $1.37. So because it's under the rollback rate,
We don't have to ask.
we don't have to go back. So again, there's truth and taxation worksheets. The comptroller's office has a really good website that we go to. Our tax assessor Julie Gonzalez is awesome.
Mhm.
And so again, I don't, I'm learning a lot of these things too. So that's why, you're only good as the people that surround you. You know what I mean? And so, she's charged with compiling that data for me. And then once she has it compiled, as far as the truth in taxation worksheets, then I go back. Well, actually, this year she did it and I did it to make sure we came up with the same numbers.
Okay.
Because this was my first year in this role
Mhm.
and working it like this. So, and then it's about building trust,
Mhm.
and I wanted her to know that, hey, I support you, but I'm also going to be checking your work, because it's at the end of the day, I'm responsible for making certain that I'm providing the correct information to our taxpayers and to our board, So if there's a question, I can't say, oh, okay. No, it doesn't work that way. So, and it's important for me to learn how to do all of these things as well. So, we're good this year.
So, Dr. Alfred Stevens, when we had the bond referendum,
Uh-huh.
it was the people needed to vote for that. It was because we used the rollback tax rate.
No, that was separate. We did the bond referendum so that we could have funds to fund all of these projects and not use our local revenue to do that. There's lots of capital projects. I mean, we're building new campuses, and we don't have the money to do that with our local tax revenue that we're generating. Though we have a 99% collection rate, which is, we're one of the, I think it's not the only, I think there are 2 districts in the state of Texas that collect their own taxes. We have in-house counsel, and usually school districts use Harris County and their related departments too, or whoever they're contracted with to collect taxes. And so we have our own tax collections in-house, a tax department. And so you can pay your bill there or you can pay online. And guess what? If you don't pay your taxes, we're going to file a suit because we need our money. So we have in-house counsel that does that. And most school districts don't have in-house counsel. That's the piece I'm talking about as far as only a couple of districts around the state have in-house counsel. Most districts outsource that. They hire a firm to help, collect delinquent taxes for those that don't pay their tax bills. So. Oh, so I want to answer your question. Okay, you were asking about the bond.
Yes.
So, anytime you want to have these major capital projects and things of that nature, to fund that, in order to issue any type of bond funds, you have to get that community approval. And so, we proposed the different renovations that needed to be made and how we needed to restructure the instructional program. I mean, there was a committee that went out and shared this information. There were, oh my gosh, so many different meetings held to give individuals opportunities to ask questions. There's even still a bond website on a link to it from our district's website where the taxpayer could put in their current property value, and if the tax rate were, because when you do sell bonds, you're gonna have to increase the tax rate to be able to pay for those bonds.
Yes.
So part of that referendum and the information that the board approved allowed us to gradually increase the interest in sinking. They had already approved that. So I have to come back each year and say, remember, a part of that referendum was we said we were going to be increasing the interest in sinking each year to be able to make those bond payments. And so that's what we've done. But that's not, it was up to a certain amount, of course, and it has to still be under that rollback rate.
Okay.
Okay, so it requires voter approval to answer your question.
Yes, that was
And
fine.
once the voters approve it, then, there's a whole separate process regarding going out to market, and we work with a financial advisor and a team of underwriters to help us sell those bonds. Yes.
So there was really a lot of planning, a future planning, because you had to be strategic in how much would all this cost and then how much we're gonna slowly
Absolutely.
increase. Okay.
Absolutely. And I will tell you that when, we have a 5-year plan.
Okay.
And so adjustments have been made to that plan, because things change. Think about the housing market for a moment. At one point, everybody could get a house. And now, when everything collapsed, things were restructured and, now you got to put a down payment on a house, and you could at one point qualify for 0 down. So, it has implications on school districts because your appraisal values, if you will, determine what your tax rate, I mean, what you're gonna pay us, in taxes. So, um, when homeowners or businesses, appeal their tax rate, or appeal their appraisal rate, I should say, or appraisal value. And that happens too. If they valued your house at $300,000, and you're saying, I don't want to pay a tax bill on $300,000, and then you appeal it, and then you win that appeal, and it goes down to, I'm going to say, 280, and you've already paid your taxes. So guess what? We have to give you that money back, that piece back, so that we can never. Those are those surprises, like things you can't plan for, because we've already collected that money. So all we can do is benchmark what we've done in previous years. But in previous years, it was smaller. But here lately, this year we had refunds higher than they've been in 10 years. Because there've been a lot of appeals. So think about now the aftermath of the storm.
Oh yes.
That is right.
So we don't know what the implications of that is going to be yet. But there are people that lost their entire home. So, it's completely gone. So if you don't rebuild, there's not a home there anymore for us to collect taxes.
Yes.
You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
So going forward, we'll have to work through those challenges. And when I want to go back to the bond again, you have this plan and you forecast, when you get all of this data and you project that it's going to cost, I'm just making up a number, $8 million to build this middle school. But those projections were done in 2012 or 2013, and now we're in 2017 where we're building, where construction costs have changed since then. So you do account for inflation, but some of the inflation that's occurring is way beyond the scope of what we thought it would be. So we've had to restructure. We've said, okay, we're not going to be able to do this project, now we're going to have to wait, because we have to get this done. So it's going back to managing and prioritizing. What do we have to get done, and what can we wait to do? So you start out with this plan, but then things happen, and you have to monitor, evaluate, and adjust, reprioritize, and then say, okay, because at the end of the day, the bottom line is you still only have this amount of money. It's not like you can just go get an extra $20 million from somewhere.
Yeah.
You only have, $700 million. You've already spent $4 million. You only have $3 million left. So it forces us to really, you've got to stay on top of this stuff, and you've got to look, and my team knows I'm going to be asking questions. I need to see this expenditure data. I need to make sure we're trekking along as expected, so that we don't have this big bubble. And if we do have a bubble of expenses, okay, what are we going to do about it? What are we going to repurpose so that we can be able to take care of it?
So what method does the district use to calculate the tax rate?
Well, I think we use the early budget process of it, because we propose a tax rate. Okay, we talk about what our budget is, right? Or we present that information to the board, and then we propose a tax rate to be able to pay for that budget, right? So once we do that, then we have to have that public meeting. So that notice has to go out 30 days or so before the actual meeting. So we send that out in May, or early May, and then we have the board meeting in June. So that's the hearing. We're inviting the public. We publish it in the Chronicle and the Northeast News, which is a local newspaper here in the Aldine community, if you will. So we do that, and then like I said earlier, I think I talked about it a little bit. We use those state funding worksheets and things like that to come up with those values and that proposed tax rate. And then we share that information in the public meeting. And then I have a public hearing. And at the public hearing, anybody that's at the hearing that comes can ask questions about that tax rate or about our appraisal values, whatever questions that they may have, and then those are answered. And then I give that recommendation to the board that that they approve this proposed tax rate, because it's based on estimates, because at that time in April, we get the estimated values, and then we get the official certified values like in August or September. And like I said, we got them in September in time for this month's board meeting. So last night I was able to have a meeting, a public meeting, and to ask the board to approve the proposed tax rate.
The next question is, I think you already answered it, because it's, could you explain?
Wait. I just remembered one other thing. from that, after that meeting takes place,
Mhm.
the most important piece is the board has to sign a resolution.
Okay.
And that is the resolution to be able to levy the ad valorem taxes.
Mhm.
So there's the signing the resolution
Mhm.
saying, yes, we approve this tax rate, basically.
Okay.
So that's key, and that's a requirement.
And I was gonna ask you, so when, if they do it right away, or you give them like a week to think about it, or
What do you mean?
to sign the resolution and to say
No. Once we get to the meeting, if there are not any
questions
questions
concerns
or concerns or any follow-up, I'll ask them to sign it
right away.
that night
Oh, okay.
or the following day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And if there are questions, then that means that it won't be signed right then, and we'll go back to that process. But usually the way it works is we've already fleshed all that out, because I'm not going to have that meeting. I'm not going to set that meeting knowing that there's still questions.
Mhm.
You want to already work through all of that. So when you get to that point, everybody's on the same page already.
And so those study sessions the night before really
Yes.
takes out that, filters that.
Yes, yes, and that's when, like,
Mhm.
study session last night, Monday
Monday.
night, started at 5.
Mhm.
It's usually at 6:30. So I had to do a whole budget presentation, which is what I do anyway, to go over everything. And then I presented a part of that presentation was presenting the certified values that we had gotten from HK at Harris County,
Mhm.
and going over that and going over the truth in taxation,
Mhm.
and just revisiting those elements again, so they can see that, this is the tax rate that we said we would levy in
Mhm.
June. That is what we put on the public notice
Mhm.
meeting. And I'm going to give you all these. This is what we set out last night.
Oh, thank you very much.
And I'll give you a copy
Thank
of the budget's on the website.
Mhm.
But this is what the board saw last night again, or the public saw at the meeting.
Thank you.
So
This
this went out in May.
present.
Went out in May, and then the HCAD letter is there telling what our what our certified values are. And then the appraisal roll information. Again, how we come up with the rates. Remember, I told you there's those
Mhm.
worksheets that we have to complete, and
Mhm.
reports that we run, just the backup. So, you have to have supporting documentation.
Yes.
So that's what this is. And this was presented last night.
So,
Yeah, I was asking you, you already talked about the MNO and
Mhm.
the INS, and
Mhm.
so, based on the CAFR report that we saw already,
Uh-huh.
most of the M&O is going towards salaries, right? Or
That is our district's biggest expense.
Yes.
I mean, we have over 10,000 employees. So, over 65% of 70% of our budget is salaries, it's payroll.
Mhm.
And so, yes, the M&O pays for salaries, absolutely, because INS only pays for bond debt. It's for our capital projects that we have in bond debt. So, which is totally separate. You can't commingle the two.
So, okay, that's good.
Yes. No.
All right. So what trends do you see present regarding our tax rates and
Sure.
all the?
Our M&O tax rate
Mhm.
has remained unchanged for the past maybe 4 or 5 years.
Mhm.
No, maybe 3 to 4 years. I can look that up. But it's at the highest it can be without having a tax rate election. I'll tell you that.
Okay.
So we're at that ceiling for M&O.
Mhm.
And so our INS,
Mhm.
on the other hand, has been increasing by 4 to 5 pennies
Mhm.
over the past 3 years.
Mhm.
Because remember, in 2015 is when we had the bond referendum.
Mhm.
And at that time, that's when the voters agreed to have that increase, that steady increase over the next 3 to 5 years, if needed,
Mhm.
to be able to pay that debt.
Yes.
So the M&O has been maintaining where it is, but the INS is increasing about 3 to 5 cents. Last year, for the 2016 tax year, it went up by 3.75 cents,
Mhm.
but this year it went up 5 cents. So that's why I'm giving you a range of pennies.
Mhm.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
Which financial reporting software do you use
Um,
or method? Because you talk about the things that you do, but is any specific method or so that you use? Or
It's a lot of different things. The software that we have here is called AMS Advantage.
oh yes, mhm.
And so that product allows us, it has different components.
Mhm.
The product allows us to, input budget and monitor expenses. So when we pay bills, it directly hits what I call the ledger, and so that reports can be ran to look at that. But it also has a component tied to it where we can forecast and project salaries. I mean, it's multidimensional, but sometimes it can be a complicated software to use because not many school districts use it, if not any, not in this area anyway. So sometimes when you want to be able to do certain things with the product, and you don't have a neighbor that you can call and say, hey, when you need to do this, what do you do in the system? But because they're using a completely different software.
Okay.
So I think that's a challenge sometimes, but it's pretty user friendly. Um, if we could change and go to a different product, I would make that recommendation for the future. But it's you can just imagine the training piece that would be coupled with that. So that's not anything we're going to do at this time, but it's meeting our needs at this point, coupled with Excel. Excel is a powerful tool because of the different spreadsheets and things you can create. And Lisa here, my secretary, she's a whiz at it, and I have a couple of other directors. They just know how to hyperlink and just build databases and just do all kinds of creative stuff, that I don't have time to figure out how they did. So anyhow, but the thing you have to be careful with Excel is when you're using formulas. If there's an error in the formula, it's going to affect your output. So that's why I'm careful with Excel, and I prefer to use our software because programmers have worked with that software and they built it, and then that's a product that we're paying for. So it has expectations that come along with that. So anyhow, I prefer to use, our AMS system to get our best information.
I remembered you saying the certified Harris County. Is that what is the certified Harris County that you?
What I was referring to was Harris County sends us, they do the appraisals of all the homes in the county or in the city.
Okay.
And then they send a value to us.
Okay.
Saying that, all the businesses and all the homes that are in Aldine ISD, this is the certified value of everything that's within the Aldine ISD limits. And that's just over $19 billion. So that's what I'm referring to when I say Harris County certified values, because they are the ones that officially, we don't do our own appraisals. The county does that.
And then the last one, which departments you have to work with in the collection of financial data?
Well, like I said, finance has multiple departments. So the finance department, it's over 80 staff members in the finance department and finance team overall, and then there's these little subsets under finance. But so you have finance that's responsible for all that financial collection of data, but technology is instrumental in that, and HR. Because the three of us have to work together to make certain that HR has to make certain that individuals are in the system with the correct salaries, because they say all of that. And then I, on the budget side, have to make sure there's funding to be able to support those salaries. And then technology has to make certain that the codes and the system is reading everyone's layer correctly, so that if you're Martha Escalante, you're getting Martha Escalante's salary and not Tamika Albert Stevens' salary. So all of us have to communicate and talk to make sure systems are in place. We cross-reference with one another a lot. We have quarterly meetings to talk about how to fine-tune processes. If you'll let me mention one thing, one change that we made this year was all new employees, everybody's on direct deposit. I mean, we finally got to that point. And so, but for new employees this year, we decided to have them get a paper check. And that was a change from the previous year, because when people would come and commit to working in Aldine, so for whatever reason, they may change their mind, they may not show up or what have you. But if you're already on direct deposit, remember, we run payroll before payday, because we can't wait to payday. So the payroll process starts 2 weeks prior to you getting your money in your bank. And so we've already set that up and sent things to sent that transaction to the bank. And so that for that last year, I remember we had so many checks that we had to recall, and we couldn't recall them all in time, because guess what? Y'all do your attendance, right? You make sure everybody
Shows per
that
se.
shows up, and then you give HR's calling and saying, is there anybody that didn't show up? Is there anybody that didn't show up? And everybody didn't report sometimes as fast as we needed them to report. So we have an individual who, got their first paycheck as if they had been at work.
Oh my goodness.
And so, but that was a learning experience. So we talked about, okay, how can we mitigate this? What can we do? So that we don't have that issue. Or it may not have been that they didn't come to work, but they changed their bank account. So that account was closed and it should have gone to this account, and they need their money. So now they need to get an in-house check, and their money is sitting in a closed account. So that happened. So this year, that's why we went to
Paper.
the first check for any new employee. It's paper just to confirm that, hey, you do work for us, and your second payroll check will be direct deposit. We want to make sure, and guess what? We got to my knowledge, at least 5 or 6 checks back from principals.
With no claim.
Yeah, because that employee, didn't come or whatever the case may be. But the point is, if it had been direct deposit and we didn't know in time, we wouldn't have been able to get those funds back. It could take months to get that money back. So that's just one way that technology, HR, and finance have to communicate and work together to solve problems and anticipate what problems are going to be, so that we can be proactive instead of reactive.
I would like to wrap up this interview from my
Okay.
side, asking you what are the struggles that you experience as the superintendent of finance here in Aldin ISD?
Um, I think the biggest struggle is knowing that the need is so great, and not being able to have the funding to support those needs. To think about some of the homes that our kids are coming from, and then some of the conditions that our kids are living in, and then some of the things that we want that our teachers have to do to help our kids be well prepared. You just want to do so much, but you can't. It's only so much that we can do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, that's a big struggle sometimes. Also, managing personnel. Personalities are different, and everybody wants their problem solved right now. I didn't get my check, or my supervisor was mean to me today. Managing personnel is a lot, and I try to be a model and make certain that I treat people the way I want to be treated. Um, but that it just day in and day out, trying to come in and know that, hey, this is what I'm doing today, and I don't get that done. And so finding that balance um, is important. And that's a struggle, because I'm looking at what our needs are. I know what we're discussing. I'm hearing what the principals are saying. And when you have to tell someone that we have to cut that program, or you make recommendations. I don't make that final decision, of course, but just to have that conversation, sometimes it's difficult. And so that's a struggle for me. And then still learning, you know, it's a lot. I call Mrs. Line sometimes and I tease her and I say, you did not tell me that it was going to be like this, we play and laugh about those sort of things. But I would tell you, at the end of the day, I love coming to work, and that makes a big difference. When you don't like getting up, going to work, I'm told that can be taxing on the body. I mean, I had that feeling my first job out of college, and I lasted there about 2 months because I hated going to work.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm not doing this. I don't care how much money, I hate coming here. So despite the struggles, despite the challenges, and payroll in it, today's payday. Okay, so everybody's
That's
happy on
true.
payday.
That's true. I forgot.
Except us. We're like, oh my God, it's payday. Oh, somebody I hope to nothing from. But just managing everyone, keeping up with everything. My secretary is so instrumental. She has a folder for me, and I'll tell her, okay, I know I cleaned this folder because I take it home every night. I said, I know I cleaned it out last night, right when I got here. It's 2:00 in the afternoon, and it's full again. And then she keeps it in there. She'll keep reminding me, don't forget, Miss Escalante said that she needs a time. She needs a time. She keeps me on task. 'Cause, I'll put it in my little pending folder, and she knows that. Hey, did you look in the pending folder today? I'm like, no, I looked at it last night. Well, you gotta go back and look at it again. So just keeping up with everything is a struggle sometimes, and then just sometimes it's so hard to say no, but you can't say yes to everything. So but I love my job. I love the people that I work with. I love working in Aldine, and I just hope that people can appreciate the choices and the decisions that we're having to make to be able to take care of our kids. Because that's always our focus, making sure we're able to take care of our kids. And our kids deserve the best opportunity to be successful. They deserve that. Yeah, all kids deserve that. But I don't want our kids to think that just because they're from a different background or living conditions that they can't have these things. And that's not the case. We pride ourselves on being able to provide a quality instructional program, and I'm charged with making certain that we have funds to do that. And so it's a struggle sometimes, but we have to find a way to get it done.
All right. I think
Well,
that's-
thank you again. Thank you
so
because we know
much.
that you're very, very busy, and we
Yes.
really appreciate your support and your time.
Yes. And if y'all need anything, let me know. I don't mind answering any questions or follow-up questions. I'm here all day, every day. And I'm here. So if it's after hours, it doesn't matter. Just you know how to get in contact with me. Okay. And good luck and congratulations,
Thank
doctor.
you. Thank you very much.
You said it's a great program, right?
It is. It
Okay,
sure is.
so I'm gonna
And of
stop
course,
this video
Dr.
now.
Slate